Hi, I'm Peter from Coffee Parts, and today we're looking at 10 tips to improve your coffee game at home without changing your coffee machine. And I even threw in a bonus at the end. First things first, and often very overlooked, is the water. Now, ideally your water quality would have a TDS of 100 parts per million. Basically, if the water is a lot lower than that, call it 60, the coffee is going to come out very thin without crema, but from a machine side, it might not even work. There might not be enough conductivity in the water for all the probes to work in terms of the boiler fuel, registering temperature, etc. If the coffee is too high in that TDS, so in Australia, places like Western Australia, South Australia, where the TDS is quite high, not only is the coffee going to taste quite chalky, quite heavy, but from a machine perspective, you're probably going to scale up your machine and cause some damage. So ideally, you're using a water filter to not only bring that TDS down to 100, but improve your water quality and any bacteria in the water, particle size, everything like that. One way to do it is to put an in-tank solution like those from BWT, or to, if you can, plumb in your machine or plumb in your mixer tap at home and just run filtered water for everything, drinking water, washing your hands, and obviously your coffee machine. The important part with water filtration is understanding that it needs to be a water filter that has scale reduction. Now that you've got your water sorted, the second thing you can look at is your coffee. Now this sounds very simple, but with coffee you got single origins and blends. The more important thing is the coffee roast date. If you're drinking coffee anything under 3 days post roast, it's too fresh. So ideally getting coffee from your local roaster and getting it with a roast date anywhere from 3 to 21 days prior, depending on how quickly you're drinking that coffee, and buying coffee in small amounts, the amount that you drink in a week or two, not buying, to say, a kilo if you're only drinking a few hundred grams a week. Now, number 3, it's pretty obvious, but once you've got your coffee sorted, you really need to be storing that coffee in an airtight container that's not getting any light and it's letting the coffee degas. Preferably stored in a cupboard, out of heat, out of sunlight. Beautiful containers are like the AIRSCAPes or the Fellow. They operate differently but similar concept. You put your coffee in, the Fellow, you turn it to all the oxygens out. On the AIRSCAPE, similar, but in this case, the lid slides down, pushes the oxygen out, and it still lets your coffee degas. It's almost the more you spend, the better you get. Not 100% like that, but having a great coffee grinder is crucial. Whether it's conical or flat, but you really need to be grinding that coffee fresh on demand. Pre-ground coffee or coffee bought in a supermarket or even ground for later in the day is just not right. So getting a grinder is the biggest game changer if you don't have one already. And with grinders, they can be relatively inexpensive, thinking of a hand grinder or something like the TIMEMORE brick, where it's very affordable grinders. And going up from there, you got grinders like the CEADO Life X, which is both a single dose grinder and grind on demand by time. Somewhere between here, you're really gonna get amazing results, and it really changes what the espresso machine can do. If you think of it, the machine can only do as much as what's brought into it. So if you bring in inconsistent grind, you're gonna get channeling and uneven extraction no matter what. Now, scales. This one, if you're not from the world of coffee, might seem a bit of left field, but they make a huge difference. Effectively, what you want to measure is the coffee you're putting into your machine, your weight in, and the coffee that's coming out, or the wet coffee, your weight out. And generally you're looking at ratios. A common ratio is 2 to 1. So say 20 grams in, or 20 grams of ground coffee, and 40 grams out, your espresso, in a particular amount of time. And the better scales will not only weigh your coffee, but also have a timer feature. So you can see your 40 grams out in, say, 30 seconds. The smaller scales work really well in that you can still measure your portafilter or your dosing cup, flipping these around or with a bigger weight plate, and you can then put them on your machine and measure your coffee out with a cup on it. A lot of them have an auto feature, so as soon as the coffee hits it, the timer starts. Some of the brands, obviously the hero brand in the coffee industry, the most well-known, also the most expensive, is the Akaya. They're the heroes, but these days there's so many good brands out there really making high-end scales. TIMEMORE, which is very commercially recognized and seen in pretty much every cafe these days, and brands like Airflow, which are very home focused but very high end at super affordable price points. Now, this is a simple one and may not really change your espresso too much, but it can really help with your workflow, which makes getting a better espresso easier. That can be your dosing collars or dosing cups. Effectively, what you're doing here is with a dosing collar, you're putting the collar on your portafilter. So in the grinder that you're grinding directly into your portafilter, helps make sure that all the coffee is now sitting in the portafilter, not losing some out to the bench. Just like I mentioned before with scales, it's really important to get the same amount every time. And if you're losing coffee, you're never going to get the same amount. And also, if you're doing WDT, which is distributing the coffee, and that's actually going to be the next thing we look at, it helps distribute the coffee and keep all the coffee inside without losing any. Another approach, if you're not using a dosing collar, will be using a dosing cup. Now with a dosing cup, you're grinding into this dosing cup. You're using it on the grinder versus having your portafilter on the grinder. Once the coffee's in there, you can obviously weigh it, make sure it's all correct, transfer it to your portafilter, give it a turn, give it a tap, and it's now ready to WDT and then tamp. Distribution. This can be in a few different forms, but basically WDT or a distributor. Now you've got your portafilter and you may or may not have your collar, depending on which distributor you have, but effectively you're using a few needles like this to move your coffee around and break any clumps. The idea of this is once you tamp, you get a very consistent extraction. When you grind coffee, there is a variance in particle size and sometimes a bit of static clumps it together. That means when the water hits it, you get path of least resistance, which is channeling. By distributing, it really helps even out that coffee, making sure you got a really even distribution. So you got simple WDTs like this, you got super fast WDTs, probably more commercially orientated, but super easy to use at home. Something like the MHW Cyclone, super quick, to be fair, actually quite fun to use. If you want the latest and greatest, the best, the most expensive, then you got things like the Puck Navigator, where effectively you're bringing electronics to do what that just did. You put it on your portafilter, you hit that button, and it's automatically distributing it for you. Effectively, just like this, electronic, it is cool though. That's WDT. Sometimes people prefer to do both or use a distributor. What this does, you adjust the height of it, it distributes the coffee and levels it all out. And that is distribution, getting it ready for the next phase, which is tamping. Tamping. Most people know what tamping is. You've all seen it in a cafe, but there is a lot of different ways to go about it. Effectively, you want to get the right size tamper. Depending on your machine, it might be 51, 53, 58. Not only you want to go to the edge, but a lot of tampers offer a sharper radius. Does mean that they're slightly easier to damage, but it also means you're getting a lot more surface area. The more curved the radius is, effectively, the less surface area you're getting, and when you tamp, you get a little ring around, and that's going to affect the distribution of the water. When it comes to tamping, you got solid tampers like this CEADO tamper. You got impact tampers. What effectively does is when you push it down, it impacts the coffee and it keeps things precise. Using a solid tamper is really down to your feel to keep it consistent every time. An impact tamper is going to give you the same pressure every time. And then you got a new version of consistent tamping that Pullman just came out with called the Hydra tamper. And it just feels totally different. Really interesting and doesn't have that impact but gives you that consistent tamping. And for those that want to go all out, really keep it consistent, mostly seen in cafes, but you're getting more and more people buy these for home, is the Pucks. Now they come in a mini, this is actually a Q1, but they come in a mini for home and they're effectively an electric tamper. You push your portafilter in and it tamps consistently every single time. And you're doing your boiler home setup, you should have one on your shopping list. Now, every machine comes with a portafilter and filter basket. So why is it so common to upgrade these? There's many different answers. One reason might be some machines come with a very curved portafilter, meaning you can't really increase your coffee by going for the more square-based baskets with a larger surface area in the base. That's a very common reason to change out the portafilter and change out the basket. Another reason is material. The better portafilters are made out of stainless, which is a lot better for temperature retention. Now, many machines come with a double or single on double, but they're portafilter with a base and a spout. When you're looking at high-end coffee and really wanting to chase results, you don't want that base. You want the coffee to come straight from the basket because that's less points of contact. Those points of contact affect the coffee temperature. So if your portafilter is not too hot, it's going to deplete temperature. Also, if your portafilter is not too clean, it's going to change up the taste of that coffee. When it comes to baskets, they really vary in quality from material to the consistency of the holes. The first high-end basket to come out was the VST. Now this was the hero used in all competitions and pretty much every high-end cafe. These baskets were laser tested to make sure that every hole and the size between the holes was super consistent, giving you that consistent result. So you're not getting areas of the basket flowing faster than others. At home, it makes a small difference. In a cafe, it makes a huge difference when you've got 3 different group heads, because one may have been running faster than the other by not having consistent baskets. Now, moving on from changing portafilters and baskets, there's now a trend for coming out with portafilters that are fully integrated. So it's all built in. You're really going super wide on that base and extraction. And in this case, it's a flat lay where you can completely lie flat on your bench while you do your puck prep. WDT, distribution, tamping, you really get to perfectly prep that puck. Small thing, but there is a market for that. Not so much in cafes, but at home when you've got more time to really nail each puck prep. Now cups. Everyone's got their own favorite cup, that mug that was given to them from a loved one. Possibly more so for tea than it is for coffee, but you're using it for coffee and it makes you happy, makes you smile, and that's all good. Leave it at that, because if it makes you happy, that's the most important thing. From a sensory experience, the world of coffee is really evolving in cups. Cups like the MHW DW collection, where you got 3 different cups in the collection, and each cup gives you a different profile. Cups like the Curve, they're really made for latte art, that perfect curvature when you're pouring in to really control that milk and coffee. Traditional cups like Acme, that the hero in cafe. Cups like the Husky, where they're more environmentally friendly, made from husk. And cups like the Fellow or MHW again, where you're really looking at the way that base sits and what that does to the coffee. These cups really come down to what your preferences are, and in many cases that just means the cup that you picked up on holidays or your favorite loved one gave to you, and it just makes you smile. And now we've covered all 10, so this is more of a bonus, which won't necessarily make your coffee any better or your setup any better, but it is nice and makes you feel better, and that's keeping your work area neat. You can start getting mats or whatever you might like to really bring in all your tools and turn it into a really nice puck prep area. So you have your flat lay portafilter, your dosing collar, so when you ground directly into that portafilter, your WT distribution, in this case, super easy and fast. You got your distributor, and finally, you got your impact tamper. So you're really getting an ultimate puck prep, ready to get that perfect espresso shot in a very neat approach. But having a really nice workspace to really work on that coffee, prepare that puck, slow things down, make your coffee, affects the way you feel, which affects the way the coffee tastes and makes everything a whole lot nicer. That was 10 simple things you can do to up your coffee game without necessarily changing your coffee machine. Now, I love the latest and greatest, and I love coffee machines, so definitely upgrading is something to look forward to, but it can be quite costly. So looking at these accessories, you don't have to buy all of them, maybe bits and pieces, maybe just a distributor or just a new tamper, just a bit of coffee storage. You maybe not buying coffee that's fresh. Doing a few small changes, especially if you don't have a grinder, big change. Doing a few changes can really change up that coffee game, give you a lot better coffee without necessarily buying a new coffee machine. Like every other YouTube channel, the famous line, if you've liked this video, hit that like button, thumbs up, like, subscribe, do all those things. But in all seriousness, it helps us grow the channel and I really appreciate it. Thank you and see you on the next video.